Welcome to our second panel of our Stress-Free Holidays Encore presentation. We are talking about healing through the holidays. The holiday season can bring up a lot of emotions, especially for those that are navigating challenges like trauma, and trauma could be related to your gut health or for grief. And our expert panelists will discuss ways to support your physical, your emotional, and your mental well-being during this busy season. From creating moments of calm to setting boundaries and embracing the healing journey, you will gain insights that can help you find balance and joy no matter what this time of year brings you. And I am so glad to be here and for you to be here and have these amazing speakers with us. And let's get started. So I just wanted to make a note that Allison Roberts was supposed to be on this panel, but she is unable to make it today. So we're going to have her on one of our summits coming up in 2025. I'm going to introduce our two panelists that are here. I'll start with Nicole, only because I see Nicole first on my screen. And Nicole is a wife, a mother to 6 daughters, nurse, and a grief coach. She spent over 10 years as a hospice nurse, helping families through hard times. Nicole knows a lot about grief, both from her job and from her own personal life. In 2019, her father passed away after a long fight with cancer. And just 4 months later, her mom died suddenly in the winter storm. On top of that, she discovered that her husband had been hiding financial problems for over 10 years. And through all of this, Nicole has found a path to healing, forgiveness, and learning how to live with grief. And now, as a grief coach, she supports others on their grief journeys, helping them to feel understood and reminding them that they don't have to face it alone. Thanks, Nicole, for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right. And we have Alyssa Simpson, who is a registered dietitian and the host of the Gut Health Dialogues podcast. She specializes in digestive health. She helps her clients to overcome gut challenges, resolve symptoms, and restore lasting wellness using natural solutions. On her podcast, Alyssa shares expert insights and inspiring client stories to empower listeners on their wellness journeys. And these two ladies are going to talk to us about how trauma and grief and gut health all go together. I'm excited for this discussion. So I want to start by asking you both to share a little bit about your story and what brought you to the work that you do today. And I know, Nicole, you talked a little bit about that, or we heard a little bit about that, but why don't you go into a little more detail for us on your story?
Yeah, so thank you for having me here. So for me, it was a shock that all my background in hospice and caring for other people, that how different it was when it's your own family and your own parents and loved ones that are sick and dying. And so I was pregnant with my 6th child when my dad was terminally ill and like just in the end stages there, that dying process, and all the grief that came with that, plus hormones from being pregnant. And then with that is like going through the expected grief and anticipatory grief. But then with my mom, the flip side of that was with a sudden traumatic death, all the different emotions and feelings that come up with that and how unexpected that was. And then when you on top of that, the marriage struggles and having 6 small children and trying to raise them. And then COVID happened and everything was just turned upside down. And that was how I discovered life coaching. Was I wanted to do something for myself, and I hired a coach for weight loss and lost 40 pounds fairly quickly, and realized how much it really helped every area of my life, and how once I didn't have overeating and food to hide behind, then all of my grief started bubbling up. And so that is now how I came to be a grief coach, is to help other people through that and give them steps and tips and boundaries to help them through their grief.
Yeah. And the holidays can be a real area of grief, whether it's because old grief comes up during when it's a milestone like Christmas or like Thanksgiving, and you've lost someone, no matter how long ago it might have been, that can always really bring up those feelings. So I think the holidays are really a time when grief can really revisit itself. I know for myself it does, for sure. Alyssa, I'd love to hear your story now.
Yeah, I've always been interested in nutrition, and my interest initially and the work that I did was more generally focused. Weight loss, diabetes is a big area. And then about 10 years into my career, I always wanted to open my practice. So I opened my own private practice. At the same time, I was learning a new specialty. I was starting to learn about integrative and functional nutrition, which is really a whole new in-depth, a big in-depth area beyond general nutrition. And I was starting to specialize in more food sensitivities and digestive issues. So all of the stress of that, and I don't think I had noticed I didn't have severe digestive issues prior to that. I think I had chronic constipation for a while, but didn't really realize it. But when I started all of these changes at the same time, the tremendous stress of that, stepping out, quitting my safe job, I was single, so I didn't have any income to fall back on. Plus, I'm learning this whole new specialty. It was just so much. I developed severe acid reflux that I remember just driving home from work feeling like almost like when you're getting sick because your throat is sore, but then it just never went away. I couldn't sleep at night because I was coughing every time I laid down. I couldn't stop coughing, and that was from the reflux. And so it really, alongside learning this digestive specialty, I was also learning how to treat myself with this. And so initially, I was really good at pulling out what my food triggers were, but it wasn't very long before I started thinking the same things I was hearing my clients say to me, which was like, okay, at first it's really exciting to find out what are your food triggers, to pull them out and feel better. But you start feeling like, am I going to have to avoid these foods forever? This is no fun at all. So I started to really become discouraged with having to avoid all my favorite foods, anything with red sauce, anything with garlic and onion, anything with citrus. And then if I did eat any of those foods, to have my symptoms flare up. So I started realizing how much more there was to it than just trying to control the different foods that you're eating. And so I realized for the root of my issue, it was stress. And that's true for so many of my clients too. And so now my focus is, certainly we still look at identifying food triggers, pulling those out temporarily, but the broader focus is getting to the root of what's out of balance with your system. And a major cornerstone of that is emotional. And but also what's out of balance, maybe from a microbe perspective, from a digestive perspective, and getting your gut into a healthier place so that you can enjoy feeling well with enjoying your favorite foods versus prolonged dietary restriction.
Yeah, I was on a project a number of years ago. So we were staying in another city 2 to 3 days a week. And the colleague that I was working with could not eat garlic or onion. I cannot tell you how restrictive that is when you're looking for something to eat, because almost everything has onion and or garlic in it. And so to have to stay away from those things, how, like, what do you have to cook at home all the time? And the flavors, right? I don't blame you
Right.
for using it.
Yeah, and those are two of the most major gut triggers of symptoms of people with IBS, for example. So absolutely. And almost every cuisine in the world uses onion and garlic.
Yeah. It's like
You
we,
almost have to just say plain chicken breast, no seasoning, no sauce, plain steamed broccoli. And again, that's if they'll even do it for you, that's no fun at all.
yeah, it was so hard for us to find a restaurant that she could eat at. It was like we'd walk along all the restaurants and she would look and have to ask. And I asked too because I'm plant-based and I get that and I understand that part because I don't take anything on the menu for granted. You never know what they've got in their ingredients, but garlic and onion, wow. And you talked about the emotional and the stress and how that really is a big thing. So I want to start with a question on mindfulness and presence and how these are essential for us to stay calm during the holidays to avoid some of that stress. So I wanted to ask you both about some tips that you might have to help people stay grounded during the holidays so that we are not going through all this stress. Because if you're doing everything or trying to be everything for everybody, it's going to be stressful. So, Alyssa, I'll let you go first on this question.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in breathing to deactivate your sympathetic nervous system response. So the sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight mode. And this is something that's supposed to be active for very short periods of time. It results in directing blood flow and nervous system signaling away from the internal organs to the extremity so that we can be on the move and save ourselves from an immediate threat. But in our modern day lifestyles, we are spending way too much time in fight or flight mode because today we're talking about grief and trauma and things like that. And but that aside, let's put that aside for a second. Even if you have too many things on your to-do list today, your body's in fight or flight mode. Your body doesn't know the difference. What that does is it interferes with signaling between the brain and the gut to digest your food, to produce enough enzymes, to produce enough acid, to move the food through at the right speed, not too slow and not too fast. And so breathing is a really effective way to deactivate that sympathetic mode, your fight or flight mode, and turn on your parasympathetic nervous system mode, which is rest and digest mode. So to become more centered, you can do this. Actually, I love recommending this before meals to really target that time and open up the pathways of signaling for a good digestion. But anytime throughout the day when you notice that feeling of stress or that feeling of overwhelm, to just take a few moments and breathe. It can be 30 seconds, it can be a couple minutes. And the key is to breathe deep into the belly and to breathe slowly. And that's what really slows down your nervous system. And you can feel yourself relaxing right away when you do that.
I love that. I used to help my daughter's soccer team. And when one of the girls would get hurt, I was the trainer, so to speak, and I would go out to help them. And the moment we asked them to just focus on their breathing, they immediately stopped crying and immediately it was like magic. It's like it turned off all of those emotions because they would be in hysterics sometimes. And if you ask them what happened, they would like just go into more hysterics. So when you said, okay, just focus on your breathing, breathe in slowly, it stopped all of that. Just like immediately. I was so amazed.
That makes sense. And of course, breathing is something you do during meditation, and meditation has so many proven health benefits. And breathing is something anyone can access at any time. So it's a
Yeah,
wonderful tool.
easy enough to do. Nicole, I'm gonna get your thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, it's always like breathe, right? Because a lot of times, like we said earlier, grief is triggered around Christmas time, around the holidays, just for the fact that you have traditions that maybe are no longer happening, or that person is no longer there, or you may be out in public and you see your dad's favorite candy, or a song starts to play and you're just instantly, Alyssa was saying how it really, our brain thinks that it's a tiger coming to attack us and eat us. Like, it really thinks that you're gonna die. And so it is panic mode. So to breathe through it. And then I also like to tell people to name the feeling, because that gives us control back over it. And when, like you were saying, Debbie, where like at the soccer field, if you say, what happened? Like, they start rattling off a bunch of thoughts, right? And really, when you ask somebody, like, how are you feeling? We rattle off a lot of thoughts. But really, if you focus on what is the feeling that I'm actually feeling, do I feel sad? Do I feel crushed? Do I feel panicked? Do I feel overwhelmed? Like, once we name that feeling, it helps us get control back over it. So we can just allow that feeling and be like, oh, nothing's gone wrong. My body's reacting exactly how it should be. That's okay. I'm just gonna sit in this and it'll go away in 60 to 90 seconds. And to just breathe through that and to allow that.
Mhm. And so how do you make it go away in 60 to 90 seconds like that? Maybe a little more. I get that, and I've heard that before, but it means you have to let go of that thought too, right?
Yeah, it's really to sit with it. So again, like, to name the feeling and then to be like, where is it? Where do I feel it physically? Because really, like, our emotions are a vibration in our body. And for me, almost always I feel it in my chest and then throughout my shoulders. I feel like tension in my shoulders all the time. That's where I carry a lot of my stress. It can be like when you're scared, like you feel like quickening in your stomach. If you sit with it and really describe it out, that's what allows it to fade away.
Okay, nice. I like that. We should do more of that. And that really speaks to the mindfulness, right? Really sitting and being mindful about your emotions, being mindful about the stress, right? If you're, I don't know how many times I've gone, I handled, when I was working in my corporate job, I handled stress fairly well, but I knew that it's coming in somewhere. I just didn't recognize it. So if you can be mindful about when you have stress, then you can implement some of these things like the breathing and just sitting with it to help it go away. I sit with it when I'm in traffic. That's a good way to sit with it.
Yeah.
And so we can incorporate some of these, some rituals and movement and things to support our mental and our physical well-being. And I wanted, maybe if you guys can dive into a couple more practices or habits that you find helpful to help during the busy times. Maybe it's relieving stress. I know breathing is a really great one, but what are some other ways that we can support our emotional and our physical well-being during the holidays? Nicole, I'm going to let you go first on this one.
Yeah, I always try to tell people to cover the basics of our needs as our human needs, right? Try to get water, try to get rest, and try to get some kind of movement. And maybe that just means, because my specialty is grief, and if it means I am in depression because of my grief right now and I don't want to get out of bed, maybe it means I'm just going to walk around my house a little bit today. I'm just going to walk up and down the hallway 5 times. Maybe it just means I'm going to drink 2 cups of water today or 2 glasses full of water today. Just like setting very little tangible goals when you're in those moments. And I think also that can be true for when we're really busy in the hectic craziness of the season, is to, again, make sure that we're getting water and sleep and movement. And sometimes being outside, I always think, is the best way to get a little bit of movement, getting some fresh air. But around here, it is very cold all the time. So we have a lot of windstorms and blizzards and all that. So sometimes it's not physically possible to get outside. Just to even, like, I don't know, shovel off your steps, or again, just walk up and down your hallway, just getting a little bit of movement. Or we live in 2024, it's almost 2025. We can pull up the beautiful internet and get any sort of 5-minute, even walking in place videos. There's just unlimited amounts of ways we can get some kind of movement or exercise.
Yeah. And I've done that with the breathing when I felt like I was just like so tense and I just knew I needed to take a break. I put on a 5-minute breathing practice and sat down and just 5 minutes. That's it. It goes like 5 minutes goes like that. And I had tingling in my brain and I felt totally different. So yeah, that's a good thing to talk about is that there's so many resources we have available through the internet for sure. Alyssa, your turn.
I agree with what you said, of course, about taking care of your body, of course, taking care of your physical needs. I think that's fundamental because if your blood sugars around the holidays, a lot of people they don't, maybe you're afraid of gaining weight, so you're going to try to skip meals or you want to save up your calories for whatever meals. So then your blood sugars are out of whack. It's so much harder to cope with anything when you're having blood sugar fluctuations. Same with just what you said about exercise is so important from a digestive perspective. Of course, exercise moves blood flow, which is good for your digestive tract, but it's also releases those endorphins, which make you feel better. And that just can't be understated because that's better than a lot of the medicines we have out there for your mental health. So those things, but having said all that, I think there are just so many things we can do. Just set aside some time every day to have a daily practice that's focused on centering you or distracting you from your stresses or your grief or whatever is troubling you. So, like you said, it can be either as small as short as 5 minutes. I usually say 10, 15, 20 minutes, something like that, that you do every day, preferably at the same time because it's easier, but it doesn't have to be just something you do every day. And we have meditation. That's my personal favorite because after like you said, I think even 5 minutes is enough, but we sit there for 15, 20 minutes because to get 5 minutes of actual stillness with your mind, sometimes you need to spend that time meditating because your mind will wander and then you have to come back to center. But there's other things, it's a very personal thing what's going to help you manage your stress. It could be reading a fiction book, it could be prayer, could be listening to soothing or upbeat music, but just take that time daily to focus on yourself versus your to-do list versus taking care of everybody else versus work, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for us to have the discipline or whatever you want to call it to take some time out of our day for our own self-care and finding that time. And I know for me, meditation was like something I knew was good for me and it's something I should do. But if I didn't put it at the beginning of my day, then the day would get away from me. And before I knew it, it was like time to go to bed and I would never do it. So one of the things, like this is my own tip. One of the things that I do is anything that's really important to me and it's a non-negotiable that I want to do for myself, I do it first thing in the morning before I get my day going. So I wanted to get you guys, what's your tips for how can we make sure that we get this self-care in, that we do some of these things for ourselves? Nicole.
I think for me, it's like setting it up the night before. I set up my coffee pot the night before. I put out my exercise clothes. I even fill my water bottle with ice. So I know in the morning when I go to exercise, it's ready to go. So that just helps me a little bit more in the morning to save just a few minutes, but also to know, nope, remember you set that up. You said you were going to go do that. So it's just trying to fulfill the promises that I make to myself in just little ways.
Yeah, good tip. Good tip. Alyssa?
There's no better answer than that one. I totally agree. Being prepared. And I would say also being realistic, thinking about, I know personally, and I know a lot of women are this way, we set goals for ourselves that we would never be able to achieve. It's just so think about prioritize what is most important. Like what from a time perspective, from a importance, just overall importance, and do those things first. And that really helps relieve stress because when you inevitably don't check everything off your to-do list, you'll feel a sense of calm that the things that needed to get done will get done. So I would say being realistic about your goals and your expectations, and then really, yeah, Nicole said, setting yourself up for success. So if it's from a food perspective, at least think about, what am I going to eat tomorrow? What's my schedule going to be like? When do I have time for breakfast or a snack? Oh, I never have time for breakfast. Do I need to wake up 10 minutes early? Do I need to prepare an overnight oats maybe tonight so I can just grab it and go tomorrow? And it really, it doesn't take a lot of time to set that intention and think about tomorrow and prepare, but it makes a huge difference.
It does for sure. Just by, it's what do they say, setting the intention. And I love what you said about, my kitty wants to join us, but I love what you say about also giving yourself a little bit of grace as well. That we set the bar way up here. And when we don't meet it, we think that we failed. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it's about giving yourself a little bit of grace, I think is really good. All right. I know that the holidays can feel overwhelming if we have commitments that are pulling us in different directions. Most people are still working, and just even work now, and especially if you're working in a job or anywhere, is very demanding. And a lot of companies, I know my company was trying to do more with less people, and we ended up getting more stuff to do. And I could have worked 24/7 and never gotten to the bottom of my to-do list. So that adds some stress. And then we have the holidays. And so it can be very overwhelming. And maybe we have some other ideas of things that we can do so that we're not getting to that point of being overwhelmed to start with. All right, Alyssa. It's probably very similar. Like a lot of this stuff blends together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for what I just said about prioritizing, that can't be overemphasized because I know for me that made such a big difference because I do never ever get everything done on my to-do list. It's like a fluid flowing thing. And I've heard many other people say the same thing. So I know a lot of us are in that boat. So prioritizing the importance really took just so much. It's just such a relief. But then you also have to fight the perfectionism of knowing that we're going for progress, really feeling good about what you did versus thinking about what you didn't do. What did I accomplish? Let yourself feel good about that. We don't do this. Maybe you get half or a third of your to-do list done, and then you just think about what you didn't get done. Reflect back to what you did do and feel good about it, and let yourself enjoy that feeling of success. The other thing I would say, especially around the holidays, is don't be afraid to say no to people. It sounds like such a simple thing, but a lot of us feel like we have to take care of everyone and say yes to everything. And it can be really hard to say no. But remind yourself that you don't have to do everything for everyone else. A lot of times, the degree to which you think you're letting them down is all in your head. A lot of times, people expect to hear either a yes or a no. So it's not a big deal. You have to think about, is this something I can add to my plate? Is this going to bring me joy and peace? Or is this making me feel obligated? Is this something I'm going to resent having to do? And don't be afraid to really focus on what truly matters and let the rest of it go. Because your energy is a limited resource. We only have so much energy, we only have so much time. And so it's okay to set boundaries that feel healthy for you.
Yeah, I like that. Nicole.
Yeah, I was just going to expound on that as well. I like to tell people no is a complete sentence. And so you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to give the back explanation. I know we want to because we feel bad and we feel guilty, but there's so many things, especially this time of year, but always. And so I was just talking with a friend this morning who she has 4 kids. I have 6 kids, and we're like the Christmas programs and the concerts. And then now they have dress up days. There's 12 days of dress up days, and then bringing the treats. And then you feel like you should bring the teachers a treat. And then you want to make good for neighbors and like everything. there's so many things. And then on top of that, it's just the regular day-to-day things of laundry and dishes and working and basketball practice, and it's all the thing, and then doing your standing traditions of maybe going to look at Christmas lights. And so what things I really like encourage people to pick the things that really are a decisive, like very much a yes and very much a no, and then look at the things that are a maybe, and then go from there and say, okay, these are the maybes. Which things are we going to drop out this year? Because we can't do everything. Like it's not physically possible. And so going off of that, and that can give you a great place to start, is to just say, these are the things we've always done, and these are non-negotiable for me. I don't want to drop those. Okay, fine. And so that kind of gives you a starting point, because I don't think a lot of times we even question those things or we even look at those things. It's just we've always done those things. And so we should just keep adding more on. So again, no is a complete sentence.
I need to remember that. I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. That's awesome.
Yeah, you got to put a quote around that one. And I really think that's important, because I know I have suffered from having a hard time setting boundaries and saying no to people. And even recently, we're doing a Facebook Live, and we do it at a certain time. And somebody asked if we could do it at a different time for them because it fits their schedule more. And we said, you can pre-record it. And they said, no, I don't want to do that. That doesn't work for me. And I'm sitting there thinking that I should give in and we should change our Facebook Live time. But my partner said, no, they do it at the same time that they're supposed to. So I went back to them and I said that. And they're like, oh, okay. And I was all stressed out about how I could accommodate this person because they asked. But just because somebody asked doesn't mean that you have to accommodate them. What did they say? If you don't ask, you won't get. So if they ask and you want to say no is a complete sentence. I love that. That's so good. So I want to give you guys a little bit of time to maybe talk about some tips on your particular specialty, because I know you're both different. Nicole, for you on grief and when people are dealing with grief over the holidays, whether it's an old grief or it's a new grief that comes up, and it could be either one. How do you deal with that? Because for me, the holidays, especially, I have my trauma from when my daughter was sick when she was a child. We had gone through a very difficult year, and I knew that the next year was going to be just as difficult as the one where we were coming out of. And people are celebrating the New Year's, and I'm like, I have nothing to celebrate in my mind because I know I'm going into a hard year. And a lot in the holidays, everything is about being happy and all of that. But if you're in a bad situation or in a situation where there's grief, that's not where we get to our happy place. And it's not expected over the holidays that we're expected to be happy and celebrating. And it's not where everybody is at. So maybe you could just expand on some ideas on that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with grief. They're uncomfortable. They don't either haven't experienced death, or they see somebody suffering and so they want to make them feel better. And so especially this time of year, people want to make you feel better. They don't want you to be sad. And part of that is for our own selfishness, right? We don't want to be uncomfortable, but we also want that other person to feel better too. And so I like to help people understand that it's normal and it's okay to not feel okay, and to allow that sadness and that grief, and that others around us also, they mean, but again, we have expectations and they can't possibly fulfill them, because a lot of times we don't even know what we need, so they don't know what we need. And I know for me, a lot of times it was around like my kids' birthdays. Like I would be very sad because my parents weren't there. I was happy for my child. I knew it was gonna be an exciting day for them. They were excited, but I was sad because it was another year that had gone by. It was them growing, that my parents never got to see them grow, at least not on this life, in this earth. So for me, it was sad. And my husband would say things like, they wouldn't want you to be sad. They would want you to be happy. This is an exciting day for so and can't you just be happy for them? And you want to be, but when people say things like that, you feel worse. And you feel guilty then on top of it because you feel like I don't want to be the person holding them back. And so for me, really, it is knowing that's normal, and it's giving space and a place for people to allow that. When other areas of our lives, we have to fake it, right? Like when we're at work, sometimes we have to show up even when we're sad, and as a parent or as a spouse or wherever, you have to show up sometimes and fake it. And so it's allowing that space to bring all of that sadness, that grief, and to a place where, again, I know grief professionally, I know it personally. So it's just a place where you can allow that. And I like to tell people too that we then come up with a plan unique for you, because everybody's grief is different, everybody's lives are different. And just starting out really with allowing you to say, okay, what do red days look like? Red days are bad days. These are the things I'm going to do for myself. Yellow days are okay days. What am I going to do for myself? And green days are good days. What am I going to do for myself on those days? And so we come up with plans on how to work around that and through that grief.
You also brought up a really interesting point, which is maybe you're not the person going through the grief, but you are part of their life. And how do you deal with that somebody else in your life, in your family or your friend circle or whatever is dealing with grief? And you can feel very helpless about that, for sure. So maybe you can give us a couple of tips to people who aren't grieving themselves, but are have somebody in their life who is going through grief. Because sometimes when you ignore it, that's not always a good thing. But also, you don't want to put your proverbial foot in your mouth and say something that probably will set them off too.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing I tell people is to just be honest, and then to ask questions that kind of put the stuff on you instead of on the person who's grieving. So a lot of times we go up to somebody who's grieving and say, "Oh, how are you?" And their natural response is, "I'm fine, I'm good." And so to turn it around and say, "Oh, I'm sure this has been really hard for you. Like, how can I help you? Can I send you a weekly text message? You don't have to respond, but can I just let you know that I'm there?" And especially if you're like close with that person, obviously you probably wouldn't say this to your cashier in the grocery store, but you could. Just offering different ways that you can show up for them and support them in different variations. So that way they know I don't have to think of something, because a lot of times our loved ones want to help us when we're grieving, but like you said, they don't know how. And so I found that offering little things like, hey, can I pick up your groceries this week? If you put in a pickup order, I would love to pick up your groceries this week. Like, oh, I saw it snowed. Do you want me to go shovel your sidewalk? Again, can I text you once a week? And that way, if you feel like talking, you can, but if you don't want to respond, you don't even have to respond. Just know that I'm going to keep checking in with you. I have a whole podcast episode about what to talk about at a funeral if people want to check that out, where I give more tips on how to talk with other loved ones that are going through that and you want to help them.
Yeah, I think it's a really important topic for sure on how to talk to someone because, and I'm going to say, you said what people will say is, I'm fine, I'm okay. To me, saying I'm fine, I'm okay is a red flag that you're really not okay. Because I know I used it and I was very fortunate. My friends just said, we're not taking no for an answer. We're going to do these things for you, whether you like it or not. And it had to do more around when my daughter would be able to go to school, taking her to school. And so they just put together things that they thought would be helpful and just did it. And because if they would have asked me, I would have said, I'm fine, I'm okay. I don't need the help.
Yep, 100%. Most
Yeah.
people do. Most people say that.
Yeah. So I love the idea of saying, I'm just going to send you a text to see if you're okay. And it's okay if you don't answer. I love that. Really nice. Love it. Alyssa, let's turn to gut health. After we talk about grief and all of the things we can do.
It certainly is related. I talked earlier about the gut-brain connection and how it interferes with digestion when you're under stress, but we can certainly have acute symptoms when we're under acute stress. If you've ever had butterflies in your stomach when you're nervous, that's such a obvious example of how our emotional feelings actually affect our gut, and we produce most of our serotonin in our gut. So that's another example. And so during periods of grief and stress, I know a lot of people experience digestive symptoms. And actually, 20% of the population experiences digestive diseases, and 40% of Americans reported that their daily lives are disrupted by digestive trouble. So it actually is a widespread issue, but we don't realize a lot of our friends have these issues because who wants to talk about their bathroom problems or their embarrassing gas or bloating to where they look like they're 6 months pregnant? It's something that we're embarrassed about or we don't feel comfortable discussing. And even beyond that, if you don't have digestive issues, a lot of people, especially women, stress around the holidays because they are worried about the food and their eating and sugar and maybe weight gain and all of that. So it is a time, I think, given that kind of the broadness of that topic, I certainly do have a gift for everyone. It's my gut-friendly holiday classics recipe collection. So if you're looking for something really specific about, okay, what foods can I eat that are gonna keep my gut calm, that are holiday dishes. So you can, if you're hosting, you can use that to prepare traditional holiday meals that are gut friendly, like we were talking about, onion free, garlic free, gluten free, maybe low in dairy, but that still tastes good. Or you can maybe use one of those dishes to bring with you as a guest and just say, here, I brought something to share. And that way you have something you know is going to be better for you to eat. But beyond the specific food choices, I think something that can be helpful for everybody is mindful eating. And so mindful eating is something that's being used we started talking about it a decade or two ago, as far as when it comes to weight loss. It can be a great tool for weight management. Studies have shown that when they have two groups of subjects and they're both instructed to eat as many M&Ms as they want, and they instruct one of the groups on mindful eating, which means you eat one M&M at a time, you focus on the textures, the flavors, the mouthfeel, the enjoyment, and you really experience that M&M one by one. They didn't give any special instructions to the other group, and they told both groups to eat as many M&Ms as they wanted. The groups that are given the mindful eating instructions eat significantly less because you do truly feel more satisfied when you fully experience the food. And then you're not as likely to overeat because, so think about another example. When you sit down in front of the TV with that bag of chips or that bowl of popcorn, when you're not focusing on it, you can inhale the whole bag and still be still be looking for another snack. Versus when you eat mindfully, you really experience the food. You don't feel like you have to eat as much. And we can do that with any meal, even if it's rich in calories, even if it has garlic in it. We can focus on the flavor, really enjoying the food. And that's another thing, giving yourself permission to enjoy something that maybe isn't as healthy as how you would normally eat or think that you should eat, but really enjoying it, chewing your food very well. This is something else we almost never do unless we've been told to, because we're, especially with our busy lifestyles and we're in a hurry. I know a lot of women eat over the counter or over the sink. So you're really not experiencing your food. And that certainly affects digestion when your food isn't chewed up well, when it's inhaled really fast before your brain can send the signal to your digestive organs to produce and secrete what they need to secrete to digest their food. So mindful eating also, from a digestive health perspective, gives your brain time to tell your stomach and your pancreas and your gallbladder to release what they need to release. The first example of that is salivation. So when you smell a food, maybe you smell what's cooking in the kitchen, maybe it's the pumpkin pie or the turkey, and you start to salivate. That's an example. You don't have food in your mouth yet. So that's an example of the brain telling the gut to start producing what it needs to produce to digest your food. So when you're salivating, also your digestive tract is salivating. You're starting to produce enzymes, you're starting to release bile. And so eating mindfully allows you to really experience those flavors, experience the smell, and allows your body to digest the food, and you're able to then feel physically satisfied without overeating, which is really helpful for us during this time of year when there's so much food available.
Yeah, if we can be mindful about what we eat and eat slowly and enjoy the company that we're surrounded by. Hopefully you enjoy the people that are with you're around. I know that's not always the case, but if you can enjoy the company and sit by people that you like at the table, then you can maybe spend a little more time slowly savoring your food versus scarfing it down and going for seconds right away. I love that. And one of the things that we used to do when I was a kid is we ate dinner at the dinner table as a family. And I feel like that's almost a lost art. At least in my circles, it's a lost art. I know when I go to visit my parents, we still eat at the dinner table. And I really enjoy it because everybody in my house, and Nicole and I were talking because she's got 6 girls. I raised 4 girls. And I think that I felt like I was a taxi driver, and our van became like the kitchen most days because we were coming and going from activities. And so eating at the table was something we do that only on special occasions, you know.
Right. And that's a big part of mindfulness, is not looking at electronics, not looking at the TV, not driving in the car while you're eating your breakfast. And also what you were saying, we can focus a lot on and stress about the food, but remember what the holiday's about. It's about family or friends and the connection and the experience. So try to take the focus off of worrying about the food. Enjoy the food mindfully, but allow yourself to also enjoy what the holidays is really supposed to be about.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. All right. And you told us about your free gift, which is great, as part of the email that everybody has received to be able to watch this amazing video with with Nicole and Alyssa. The free gifts are listed below. And Nicole, you can have the last word on your tip for everyone and your free gift before we close it out.
Yeah, so my free gift is I am running a webinar through December, 3 tips to get through the holidays with grief. And that's on my website, nursegriefcoaching.com. And then after the holidays, I will be running probably a weekly or every other week webinar for different grief topics. But I think my just final closing advice or tip is, again, just to know that no is a complete sentence.
I love that. Easy things, right? Eat mindfully, drink water, say no, and remember no is a complete sentence. Ladies, I want to thank you both for your time today to talk about what you're passionate about and how people can alleviate the stress and do the best to enjoy the holidays that we have. And remember that it's up to you to make that happen. So thank you, ladies, for your time today.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.